Hello and welcome to a vintage cube draft here for Arcane Cards. My name is Damon, and we opened a piece of power, so lucky us. Mox Jet it is. I've done a couple of these drafts so far, 3, and I've gone 2-1 twice and 3-0 once, so feeling like I'm getting a bit of a handle on it. Vintage Cube is a little bit different than Legacy Cube. Obviously, Vintage is basically no holds barred. You get all of the most powerful cards in Magic, e.g. all of the Moxes, you get Black Lotus, you get Time Walk, Ancestral, all, the super fun cards to play with and against, whereas Legacy Cube is a little bit more balanced. Just going to bring up this card preview pane for you here. And yeah, basically not much to say. We've opened a Mox Jet, so basic rules for Vintage Cube goes that if you open a piece of power, like any of the Moxes, the Black Lotus, Time Walk, Ancestral, Recall, basically just take it because those cards are going to be so above the power level of everything else in the pack. Even though, it's cubed, there's a sneak attack here, which is really strong. But Mox Jet is always just basically going to be the better pick because these are the power 9 for a reason. So we start with the Mox Jet, that's nice. And we pass the sneak attack, worth remembering. This doesn't mean we're black necessarily, this is just a free land drop. It's nice if we go into some form of black, but it doesn't have to be that way. What do I like from the next pack? Mox Diamond, we could go with another Mox, although this one is of course a lot worse. Still, it's better than some of the Chrome Mox, etc. So we could take a Mox here. There's a Joyo, which seems like it could actually be quite decent. Liliana, Planeswalker, but it's a bit expensive. There's Pack Rat, which if you just kind of want to play a card that can win the game on its own. Not so much in Legacy, this is, Vintage. It's more of a Legacy Cube card. There's also Noble Hierarch, which I quite like. All of the mana elves are very efficient. You want your plays to be cheap, interactive, and, winning you the game, and Noble Hierarch does basically all of it. So I think the choice here is between Mox Diamond, Noble Hierarch, and maybe a powerful spell like Inferno Titan or Joyra. I'm going to take the second Mox. Start with 2 Moxes, pretty open. Okay, our next pack we're looking at Inkwell Leviathan, which I do like. This is a sweet target to get if you get any of the Tinker effects, if you go into any of the basically things you can sacrifice artifacts to get other artifacts. So that's my front runner at the moment. We've also got in the pack Thran Dynamo, which is very strong, goes well into an Upwilling or the Burning of Zinye and Wildfire style decks. Having something that taps for so much mana is very useful. Shallow Grave can be a nice combo if you want to reanimate stuff like Emrakul. Basically, for Vintage Cube, you want to be either doing busted things or disrupting your opponent's busted things. There's not much time in the middle to do other stuff, so cards like the Scarab God get a lot worse because, it's busted in Standard, but it's not broken when you can be doing like 1 mana I win the game spells. So I'm going to take Inkwell Leviathan here. I think it's that or Thran Dynamo. There's also another mana elf which we're passing, so someone could definitely be going into that style of deck. So now that we've got an Inkwell, we're of course looking for stuff that can put artifacts into play, Goblin Welder or Tinker or those kind of effects. What have we got in this next pack? We've got a Phyrexian Metamorph, which I really like. Very solid card. You don't have to be blue when you play it. It's also an artifact and basically copies their best card. So it's a 3 mana clone, which is strong, and it can copy artifacts as well. It's not busted on the same level as some of these other cards, but it's still a strong card. Outside of that, there's not much in this pack. There's Eternal Witness, which I really enjoy, but it's definitely not. You need to be solid green before you're going in that direction. Survival of the Fittest. Yeah, there's nothing really much here. Phyrexian Metamorph also keeps us open in the sense that we've now got 3 essentially colourless picks. Wow, so some strong cards in this pack. So Time Twister is also one of the Power 9 cards. It's probably, well, it's definitely the least important of the Power 9 cards, but it's still very strong. And there's also Ancient Tomb here. Wow, and there's a Lion's Eye Diamond, so if we really wanted to kind of get some Storm going, we could take Time Twister and hope to wheel Lion's Eye Diamond. It's a potential. Storm's pretty hard to play. I'm not sure if I'd be very good at playing it. Ancient Tomb is also very, very solid card. I wouldn't be surprised if the correct pick is Ancient Tomb here. I'm wondering if we could have a bit of fun with Time Twister, though. Time Twister or Tomb? It's probably, as I'm saying, Tomb is probably the correct pick. I'm going to take Tomb here over Time Twister. We'll see if that comes back to bite us. Alright, so now we've got a Signet, which could be nice, especially if we're going that artifact theme, or we've got a Jace if we're in blue. We do have two bluish cards, although neither of them need to actually be played in blue. Jace is a nice little planeswalker. He's cheap enough that you can sort of get some value with. Again, better in, say, Legacy Cube than Vintage Cubes, but cheap planeswalkers are good. It's either that or the Golgari Signet. Signets are strong. I wouldn't be surprised if the correct pick was to take the Signet here over the Jace, but I also like having card draw. I like cutting off blue, so I'm going to take Jace over Signet, and then if we get a whole lot of artifact synergies, I'll probably regret that. Natural Order is going pretty late here. It's a very strong card. There's nothing really that I'd like to take out of this pack, unfortunately. I guess Cabal Ritual, if we're going Storm, maybe we should force some Storm. Natural Order, I think, is a little bit late to jump in on the Llanowar Elves package, since we've passed two really good Elves. I mean, if they all wheel, then I'll take them, but I don't think that's likely to happen. Maybe I should have taken that Time Twister after all, since I could take a Cabal Ritual here. Natural Order is strong. I'm going to pass it, I think, for a Cabal Ritual on the off chance that Storm is open, and trust me, you probably don't want to see me playing Storm. So many things can go wrong with that. So here we've got Tangle Wire, which is very good in an aggressive deck, very good against controlling decks, obviously, because it taps down 4 of their things, and then 3 of their things, etc. I can't read the other side of this card, Magic Online. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, that player loses 1 life for each card fewer than 3 in their hand. It took me so long to read, I don't even know what I'm picking here. I guess I'm taking Tangle Wire. Not that I'm an aggressive deck, I was just so confused reading that card. Time Spiral. Okay, well this could be a signal that Storm is open. We do at least have these 2 Storm cards. We're kind of missing all of the... Thing is, if you're building a Storm deck, you need so many pieces to come together. You need card draw, you need mana acceleration, you need things like... that now allows you to play lands out of your graveyard. You need a whole lot of set-up cheap cards that can find this combo. It's very hard to get to. So... there's a chance that I'm going to take all these cards and then, still not get to an absolute Storm deck. And then you need like a Storm payoff, some kind of win condition. Wow, Noble Hierarch Wield? Okay, well, if Green Mana Dorks are open, I'll jump into it and sort of disregard some of my picks here. Because that's definitely the strongest card in the pack here. So if we get this... wow, alright. No respect for these Mana Dorks. So I'm taking this here over a Desperate Ritual because, again, the Storm's pretty dodge. As a Grave Robber or a Sanctum, probably take Sanctum at this point since I've got blue and green. Oracle of Muldiah is a very strong card, so I'll take that. So we might be getting some green. We didn't get the Lion's Eye Diamond back, although that was kind of unlikely. I guess I'm not going to play either of these. Thundermaw Hellkite. Alright, so it doesn't seem like people are playing mono red either, but there might be a mono white player because sometimes you often get a lot of white coming around at the end. So we've got a couple of different routes we can go here. We've got 2 mana elves and an oracle. We've also got a bit of a tinker target. We've got some fast mana. Yeah, there's a few things going on. So there's Grim Tutor in this pack, which is good for the Storm package, but we might be passing on that. There's Mishra's Workshop, which is really strong if you do an artifact package. Dak Faden is very strong because you can minus to steal your opponent's Moxes. Underground Sea, of course, is a great land to have access to. This is an interesting point. There's also Jace the Mind Sculptor if you just want some card advantage. Jace is good with Oracle. That is a good little combo. You can put lands on top of your library. Dak Faden is very strong, although I don't have any other real red to go with it. I don't really have any black, so the tutor doesn't make sense, because that would only be if I went going Storm. So I think it's probably between Mishra's Workshop, Jace the Mind Sculptor, and maybe like Underground Sea. When you put it that way, I guess I just take Jace. Double Jace. Okay, Watery Grave, which is a worse Underground Sea, of course. Mind's Desire for the Storm deck. We've got Animate Dead, Phantasmal Image, and there's an Elves. So at some point I'm going to have to decide whether I am going to go down this Elves route. I've got a lot of blue cards as well, which is not unfortunate, but like, Elves are fine, but you need some kind of payoff. You need a Crater Hoof Behemoth, or some reason to have tons of creatures in play before the Elves actually are any good. Land Tax is a strong card. Phantasmal Image is a strong card. And the Grave. It's nothing super exciting out of this pack, I must say. Probably take a Mana Elf. I mean, there's a chance that I'll start wheeling them again. I can't remember exactly how many were in the first pack. There was 1 or 2. Oh, sorry, there was 2 or 3. But like maybe I didn't wheel one. Maybe someone jumped in on the last section. I mean, all of these cards are fine. I don't really know what's more open at this point. Although I can kind of tell that the Storm combo, obviously Storm didn't seem super open. So here we've got a choice between Mystic Confluence, very strong card, Shelldock Isle, also really good, another Elf, and a Thoughtseize if we want Disruption. There's kind of a Reanimate package going around. Verdant Catacombs is fine. I think we're narrowing it down to say Shelldock, Mystic Confluence, and another Elf. Since I don't have the Elf payoff and I wheeled the Elf last time, I'm not going to take the Elf here. So do I want Shelldock or Mystic Confluence? They're both very strong cards. Probably going to take Shelldock since it's a free card. Maybe we wheel Mystic Confluence. This is a very strong card, but sometimes people don't rate it. Okay. Big C. Big C comes out. I'm taking that over a Treachery, which is good, and Ponder, which is great. All cheap cards that like Search and Scry, and you should basically just take them because all the rest of your cards are so powerful that you're finding your combo pieces, etc., etc. But I think this is a clear sign that we should be in the Green Elves deck. Hopefully, wheel that first Elf. We're probably going to be green-blue, unless we pick up a Raphaelos, in which case maybe we're very light blue. Maybe we don't play blue. I mean, Time Spiral's not a huge reason. I've just got 2 Jaces here. But Craterhoof Behemoth is the reason to be picking up these Mana Elves, so I can't really ignore that sort of signal. Take the Behemoth. So now I've got a choice about whether I want to keep picking up blue cards like Impulse, which is very strong. Course of Crufix is really nice as well. That would combo well with, again, Jace and this Oracle of Muldiah. So it's whether or not I pick up Impulse or Corsair. I think normally I'd pick up Impulse since it gets you closer to what you're doing, but there is a chance now that I am mono green, in which case I might want to start taking green cards higher than these blue cards. And I think because I've got both Jace and the Oracle of Muldiah, I'll take Corsair here. So we're kind of going into a big ramp deck. We want as many elves as we can. There's another one. And we also wanted some ways to search up Craterhoof. So it's a pity I didn't take that natural order earlier on, and that would have been great. How many other ways are there to sneak it into play? There's Tooth and Nail, which also might be taken by a big ramp deck, although maybe there's not tons of those going around. There's like Fauna Shaman, which actually I think I've seen. Maybe it was in one of the earlier packs. Let's start sorting these by converted mana cost. Heartbeat of Spring, Wall of Roots, Divining Top, Crucible. Heartbeat's a way to get plenty of mana. Crucible I don't really have any combos with. Wall of Roots is a good mana accelerator. I think I'm actually going to take the Divining Top because I have... Well, no, Jace is the same as... Well, no, because I have the Corsair and the Oracle. I will need to pick up some fetch lands if I want to make that work, or ways to shuffle my library. I think that's better than the Wall. Wall is good, but it can't attack, which is a key requirement when you've got a Craterhoof. So I'm going to take Top. Palancron is a very strong card. Spellskite can be useful. Dismember is removal if you need it. Palancron can sort of do some loops if you can find some ways to do that. So do I want a Palancron? Or just like have a Spellskite to protect things? This doesn't have Defender, so I can actually attack with Craterhoof. Yeah, I don't think I can do any really busted things with Palancron. Let's take a Spellskite. Alright, Mishra's Workshop wheeled, but we're not really doing artifacts, so that's not super interesting. Beast from Within also wheeled, and I do like having disruptive spells. Green really doesn't have many, so Beast is nice to get. Repeal is another good interactive spell, but I'm kind of leaning in favour of the green cards. Image, Smokestack, Mind's Desire. So I think here it's really between Image and Smokestack. This can be good if you've got a lot of mana elves, but we're also trying to get a lot of mana. Like if we were cheating out big fatties, I'd probably take it. But I think here I'm going to take Image. You can just copy their best creature, get some good value. Okay, we did wheel this elf, so no one is drafting the elves deck. Although whether or not we get a Rofellos remains to be seen. Rishadan Port is probably main deckable. There's a lot of powerful lands in this format. Mirari's Wake. I guess I could be splashing this. Something to keep in mind. Abrupt Decay, again, something I could be splashing. So let's put those maybes there. Botanical Sanctum at the moment is in the deck, obviously. What do I pick up? Delver. Probably not playing that. Oath of Druids. That is not, unfortunately, a way to get the Craterhoof very reliably. Because you just hit the first creature card. Alright, so here instead, got Jace, I've got a Breeding Pool which I might take, or I've got a Bloodstained Mire, which it does give me a shuffle effect, but I've got nothing to fetch with it. So, it's also a Sphinx, but I don't have that Tinker going. Lotus Bloom, blah blah blah. Yeah, I think I'm just taking a Breeding Pool and being a bit boring here. And then we get past a Time Walk. Nope. We do get past a Mana Vault. Wow. It's almost... Oh, and there's also a Tooth and Nail in the pack. Tooth and Nail gives us a way to ramp out Craterhoof and potentially Inkwell. Fingers crossed, it might actually wheel. Like, most of the other Mana Elves and Dorks have been wheeling. I don't think I can pass Mana Vault. This card is so broken. It's not so broken. It's like not broken on the same level as Sol Ring and Power 9, but... like, it does add 3 mana to your mana pool for 1, so it accelerates you to 5 mana on turn 2, and, like, that's a lot. So I think I'm going to take Mana Vault here and hopefully wheel Tooth and Nail. Mana Vault is kind of like one of the almost Power 9 cards, so definitely deserves a bit of respect. Rishkar Skullclamp. Sylvan Caryatid. Sorry, I don't know why I said Rishkar. Rishkar's not that exciting, but Skullclamp is really exciting. Not too much else to talk about here. Sylvan Caryatid is fine, but again, it has Defender, and you really want creatures that can attack when you've got Craterhoof. Whereas Skullclamp is quite exciting, because if I've got 1/1s lying around, I can just sacrifice them to draw 2 cards. To cheap, draws cards. You can see how, like, many cheap things, I've, like, got really cheap things, and I've also got really expensive things, and it's kind of the bit in the middle that you want to avoid, because that's not much use. So, there's an Emrakul here, the big one. We don't have ways to cheat that into play, so we'd have to be casting it for 15, and we don't really have that much mana, so I'm probably not taking Emmy. You know, I've got ways to, like, ramp mana. I can get to 8 probably quite easily, but getting to 15 is another thing entirely. So probably here I'm just taking Treasure Cruise, getting card draw. I would also like a Reclamation Sage or something, but it does look I'm kind of blue-green at the moment. I haven't seen that Rofellos, so there's a chance that someone took it early. And this card draw is good. Probably not going to play Time Spiral though. Let's take that out. Jiraga Tree Speaker is the best of the 1 mana elves, essentially. Because you play it on turn 1, then on turn 2 you activate it, and suddenly you've got something that taps for 2 mana, and then you tap it for 2 mana, so you haven't lost anything, but you've gained a creature that can tap for 2 mana, which is very powerful. Probably wheel a Manglehorn or that Rec Sage, hopefully. Maybe I am interested in Eureka. It's normally a trap. I'm probably just taking Snapcaster Mage. I don't have anything ridiculous to Snapcaster, unfortunately. In fact, do I have anything? Well, that's sad. That is sad. Snapcastering Treasure Cruise doesn't seem great. There's also Wooded Foothills. Maybe I'm just taking Wooded Foothills. Yeah. I mean, Garruk is really strong, actually, now that I think about it. Because he can untap Ancient Tomb. He overruns. Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm taking Garruk over Wooded Foothills. This is an interesting pack. Garruk can be really strong, especially if we get Gaia's Cradle, which is still a chance we get a Gaia's Cradle. Here's Goblin Welder, a little bit too late to kind of make our Inkwell Leviathan work. Here I'm either taking Birds of Paradise or Tropical Island. Depends how much I want my mana base and how many mana elves I want. It's an interesting pack. There's 9 cards in this pack. Probably unlikely to wheel Birds of Paradise. I do have tons of 1 mana accelerants. Tropical Island is a nice card, but I also have Botanical Sanctum. So maybe I don't need the mana fixing. I'll just take as many elves, so to speak, as I can get. Tendrils of Agony. High Tide. There's a Force Spike or a Song of the Dryads. I'm probably not taking High Tide, so I can rule that out. So do I want Force Spike in that? Do I want some form of interaction? It's not great interaction. Or do I want a Song of the Dryad which can take out a Planeswalker? I guess I don't really have any interaction of that kind, so I'm probably going to take Song over Force Spike since turn 1 is generally going to be a forest. Okay, back to our original pack. There's a Lotus Bloom, there's a Master of the Wild Hunt, and there's a Riftwing Cloudscape. I like all of those. We unfortunately missed on a way to... I guess we could wheel that Tooth and Nail, which would be really solid for us. So I would really like to wheel a Tooth and Nail. Probably taking, I guess, Lotus Bloom here. Or a Master of the Wild Hunt. I'll take a Lotus Bloom. Gives us a lot of mana. Oh, we wheel Tooth and Nail. We wheel Tooth and Nail. Perfect card. Because that now gives us a way to search out Craterhoof, and we've got one random other fatty in case you want it. Soul of Temptation is really strong too, but Tooth and Nail for the combo finish seems great in our deck. Do we want Rishkar or do we want Sylvan Caryatid? Fiery Confluence is really strong too. You can destroy artifacts with it and board wipe. Really, really powerful. Rishkar or Sylvan Caryatid. Rishkar can buff our elves, but they tap for mana anyway, so I'm probably taking Sylvan Caryatid. Rexage, Regrowth. Oh, that anti-our deck. Goblin Chainwhirler just mows down all of our little guys. But Rexage is really nice to have in the main deck. There's lots of powerful artifacts, especially, and then also some enchantments running around. We'll take an Armageddon away. Brain Freeze versus Flametongue Kavu. Well, Brain Freeze is more annoying if someone plays it against us. Okay, so we did kind of get there. We got Tooth and Nail and Craterhoof Behemoth. Natural Order would have been a sweet pick. I don't remember what I picked over Natural Order. That would have been really good to take, though. We didn't get Raphaelis. We didn't get Gaia's Cradle, so we don't have busted mana accelerants. But we have a few things going on. We've got a Mox. We've got 2 Moxes and a Lotus Bloom. Tons of mana elves. So Mox counts as a land. So how many would I own? And I've got Mana Vault as well. Wow. Alright. So I'm probably happy playing... What would you say? 15 lands and a Mox? And to cut to the chase, this is the final deck with a couple of cuts like Jace and a total of 14 lands plus all of the mana ramp. So, with that said, looks like a fun deck. Let's head in for round 1. So here we are for round 1, and our hand looks pretty perfect. An untapped green source, multiple mana elves, even a Lotus Bloom and a Skull Clamp to go with it. So we're definitely going to get to see the power of the elves and the Skull Clamp here. Suspend our Lotus Bloom. And we've also got Tooth and Nail to search out our big fatties. Play down a Shelldock Isle, getting out a Courser. Not the best thing to get, but still something. And just use our mana efficiently. Suddenly we're only 2 cards in hand. Opponent still no plays here. Lotus Bloom is 1 turn off. So here I decide to Skull Clamp the least important elf. Draws me another elf and Lanoir. Since now I've got 6 mana, I'm going to attack with my elf, which gives it Exalt to get a few points of damage in. Next turn I'll have 6 mana if I don't draw a land, plus 3 from the Lotus Bloom coming in. Opponent, end of turn, entombs a Gristlebrand. Black Lotus, the best card in the cube. Uses it to power out a Liliana Death's Majesty and reanimates Gristlebrand. So, nice turn from the opponent. As you can see, Vintage Cube is pretty busted. Our Lotus Bloom comes in now. We do decide to cast it. That gives us a total of 9 mana, so tapping all of our creatures, we get to cast Tooth and Nail with Entwine. Here I search out Craterhoof and Phyrexian Metamorph, hoping to copy the Craterhoof. Unfortunately, since they enter the battlefield at the same time, the Metamorph says it enters the battlefield as a copy of something, so it already has to be in play. It's not an enters the battlefield ability. So, what can you say? I get a Grizzlebrand, the worst. Here the opponent attacks with their Grizzlebrand, I block with mine, I draw 7 cards, we both gain 7 life. and it dies, and the opponent decides to scoop. Although they probably had a little bit of game left in them, but with that said, I did get a fresh group of 7, tons of mana dorks and a skull clamp on the battlefield, so it wasn't looking great for them. Anyway, with that said, we go into the sideboard, and our decks look pretty good against them. They're reanimation, so we don't really have any targets to bring in. We could think about maybe the Song of the Dryads if they're going to reanimate something big, but the rest of our stuff doesn't really do anything. Richard and Port, not really any use. So we submit and head back for game number 2. So we are on the draw here for game number 2, and our hand looks pretty busted in terms of Mana Vault, Llanowar Elves, Oracle, and an Ancient Tomb. So this is going to be a fun one. Opponent has a Putrid Imp to lead, and we just play a Birds of Paradise since it taps for blue mana. Turn number 2 is fun. With 4 mana here we get to play Oracle of Muldiah, Tooth and Nail off the top, but we get to play an extra land and another elf, so suddenly we've got an absurd amount of mana on turn 2. Turn 3 is going to be even better, of course. Opponent gets their Buried Alive going, putting Massacre Worm, Grizzlebrand, and Iona in the bin. But here we go for a Mana Vault on turn 3, tap a casual 9 mana, Tooth and Nail with Entwine, turn 3, and we get to fetch out a Craterhoof, and I just get an Inkwell Leviathan as a big threat in case I manage to reanimate a Massacre Worm or something. We attack with everything, and the opponent drops to 3 life, but then an Animate Dead brings back a Massacre Worm, which does kill off most of our team, leaving us with 2 giant fatties on the plus side. So, pretty hard for the opponent to come back from here, although we are at 10 life thanks to that Massacre Worm. Untap the Mana Vault, we draw a Jace. We could actually have Reclamation to Sage the Animate Dead as a way to win, which in retrospect is definitely a mistake. I didn't see it on the battlefield at that point, but in either case we drop them to 1 and the opponent scoops. So yeah, pretty busted stuff going on in the Vintage Cube, and hopefully showing off the power of these Mana Elves and cheap mana accelerants. With that said, let's go on to round number 2. So round 2 we're on the play again, and again our hand has a 1-drop Elf, Skull Clamp, and Craterhoof, so we've basically got everything we need. Good start for us. Opponent also on the green plan, we'll see what they bring to the table. Picking up another mana accelerant means I can play out the Caryatid here and just be mana efficient. And as you can see, the Skull Clamp is great at if you're just running out of cards, you've got so many things to equip it to and just draw cards. Like here I'm going to sacrifice the elves, draw another elf, and I decide not to Skull Clamp anything up because now I have a total of 8 mana, which is enough to cast Craterhoof, or if I draw a land I'll be able to cast Inkwell Leviathan. Opponent attacks with their Den Protector, which seems pretty pathetic in the face of what we're doing. So we drew the land. Green doesn't really have much to disrupt an Inkwell Leviathan, so I put this one down. It's a nice 7/11. Oracle of Muldiah on a perfectly fair turn 4 from the opponent. Although we of course just now get to cast Craterhoof Behemoth with 3 untapped creatures and the opponent scoops. So again, we're looking at our sideboard, we don't really have anything to bring in. Our deck seems good, it seems absurdly pushed in terms of the 1-drop spot, so we just submit it and go back in for the next game. So this is our 7-card hand here in round 2, the second game. Not very good for us since it doesn't have a Mana Elf, and Rex, Sage and Phantasmal Image don't do anything, so it seems like an easy mulligan. The second hand is a keeper though, and we scry the Sensei's Divining Top to the bottom since we just really want to hit lands. Drawing a Drag a Tree Speaker, we still want to play out the Llanowar Elves on the first turn because the Tree Speaker doesn't generate mana until you have 2 mana, whereas Llanowar Elves always gives you that mana. Den Protector again, the most powerful play from the opponent. We did draw a land, which means we get to power out 2 more elves. Leovold from the opponent, which means that we don't want to be drawing many cards very soon, but an island off the top's pretty nice. Get to level up the Tree Speaker, use the Tree Speaker to cast Garruk, and then I just make a beast since I might be wanting to chump block the Leovold and block the Den Protector just to keep the Garruk alive. Level up the Tree Speaker here and use Garruk's plus ability to start getting some more mana. My plan is basically to cast an Inkwell Leviathan at some point, so I'm leaving up a Beast from Within with 3 mana in case the opponent has anything to say, since we do really want our Garruk to survive. Here we get to level up the Tree Speaker to level 5, which means all of our elves tap for double green, use Garruk to float a blue, and tap all of our elves down to cast an Inkwell Leviathan. So again, Garruk's got protection, and the opponent really hasn't had anything busted to say, and unfortunately in Vintage Cube you need to do busted things. Genesis Wave for 2 is not going to do it, and Here we get to just overrun Garruk, give everything +3/+3 and trample, and that's going to do it. So, pretty easy game so far. We'll see what awaits us in the finals. Here we are for the finals, and our opener, unfortunately, while having double elves and a skull clamp, doesn't have a green source. So instead of risking it, we are on the draw. I decide to take a mulligan. Here we get an acceptable hand with Noble Hierarch and a Tree Speaker on top. However, a turn 1 Inquisition takes our Hierarch, meaning we can put down the Tree Speaker, but are rapidly running out of cards. Hold the Mox Diamond in hand in case you need to use it. Level up the Tree Speaker here and draw a Craterhoof Behemoth. Stoneforge Mystic from the opponent and a Soul Ring means they're going to power out a Sword of Fire and Ice, a little bit ahead of schedule. Unfortunately, we just draw another land, so we can't actually really do anything here. The opponent equips a Sword of Fire and Ice, and we're sort of forced to chump block because our thing's going to die from the 2 points of damage that the sword can deal anyway. So if we don't block, they just get to draw a card. Get to cast a Lotus Bloom here and an Oracle of Muldiah, which we don't get any value off, unfortunately. And again, we're forced to chump block because that 2 damage will take out the Oracle. Double Knight from the opponent, but we can finally Rex Sage that sword. They get a massive pump from the History of Benali, but at least we get to trade off here, and now finally we have enough cards in the graveyard to Treasure Cruise, bringing us a Sylvan Caryatid. Opponent attacks with both knights, and we block with our Sylvan Caryatid. Opponent plays the Abyss. Unfortunately, I don't think they quite know how the Abyss works. I'm going quite fast here because I'm speeding through the game, but since this is a rarish enchantment, I'll zoom in on it. So at the beginning of each player's upkeep, destroy target non-artifact creature that player controls of their choice that can't be regenerated. Notably, of course, target and Sylvan Caryatid has hexproof. So they're basically popping their own creatures off while I've got a Sylvan Caryatid. Land tax means that I'm not incentivized to play any lands, since my opponent's just going to get to search them out if they have any lands. So we're in this kind of awkward game state where I can't really play creatures because they'll be killed by the Abyss. I can't really play lands because then their land tax will start going off. And the opponent, of course, has a Planeswalker. So the Abyss still doing nothing to our Sylvan Caryatid, but we do draw a Beast from Within, which is a nice answer for Gideon Dura. Here I decide to put down 2 mana elves and a Mox and use the Beast from Within to destroy the Gideon Dura, because that means next turn I can cast the Craterhoof. Unfortunately, Vindicate takes out our Mox, and then we'd have 1 mana short of casting Craterhoof or the 2 mana of the Inkwell Leviathan. So again, we're just passing turns. Our birds and our elves die to the Abyss. The opponent doesn't really have anything going on yet, but I still think it's important to keep them off that land tax mana, since even if we cast the Craterhoof, it's just going to be a 5/5. A Fearmancer comes down, which starts making snakes, which is going to be good for them because they are going to have to only sacrifice a snake every turn. So I decided to make my own a Fearmancer and also play an elf, since my plan is to sacrifice the snakes. Opponent has a Mox Emerald and the 4th mana, and then with their 7 mana they cast one of the larger bombs, Elesh Norn, which completely wipes my board, leaving me with a very small Sylvan Caryatid. They attack for 4, and I just take it because I don't really have any chance of winning if the Caryatid dies. Drawing a Garruk means I get to live 1 more turn, making a 1/1 beast as a chump blocker. Unfortunately, I do need something to both kill Elesh Norn and also bring me back from this game, so it's unlikely, but we'll keep playing it out just to see. Opponent plays a Hero of Bladehole, which is almost certainly going to seal the deal, and we draw a Cursor of Krufix. So yeah, very interesting game from the opponent. They're obviously playing some kind of permission-based deck, but they do have some quite aggressive cards in there as well, and a little Knight synergy. So from our sideboard, we've got a few interesting choices. I decided to bring in the Spellskite, mainly because it's an artifact, and so it can't be hit by the Abyss, although again, it's not the most threatening of creatures. So the fact that I've got Inkwell, Phyrexian Metamorph, the Spellskite, and my Caryatid means I might be able to have a few creatures that don't die to the Abyss, but the opponent also had a lot of aggressive cards, so it might be able to block the Knights quite efficiently, and to make room for it I take out the Phantasmal Image, since they didn't have great end of the battlefield effects, and I've already got a clone effect anyway. So here for the second game of the finals, we don't have a Mana Elf, but we do have Lotus Bloom, Metamorph, and Garruk. We are on the play. It's an interesting point. I decided to keep this hand because we've got so many good Mana Elf draws, etc. We'll see if it pays off. Our opponent does mulligan to 6 as well. So here we get to do a Shelldock Isle, looking at 3 Forests and an Avacyn's Pilgrim, suspend our Lotus Bloom, and pass the turn. Opponent has a turn 1 land tax, which is very annoying for us. We draw a Spellskite, decide not to play the land. The opponent has a Soul Ring and passes the turn back. So again, we're not doing anything, but at least we have a Lotus Bloom coming in next turn, and the opponent's not playing lands either, so in this kind of curious stalemate situation we get with land tax. Lotus Bloom comes in, so here I decide to sacrifice it to play both a Noble Hierarch and use my Phyrexian Metamorph to copy their Soul Ring, since it seems to be the best thing on the battlefield. Use the Soul Ring to cast a Spellskite, still only on one land here, may be noted. Opponent, again, refusing to play any lands since they use a Dark Ritual, and then cheat out with 4 mana the Abyss, our favourite card to see, so goodbye Noble Hierarch. At least our Spellskite's going to survive. We draw a Beast from within, and I actually decide to go ahead and beast their Soul Ring, since I feel like it's the most important thing they have going on. I can play around the Abyss, but that Soul Ring is giving them, absurd amounts of mana, and maybe they're going to have to play lands here. We did have to play a land, so they get to use the land tax to search out a bunch of mana, and we had to play the green, so we could actually cast the Beast from within. Bitter Blossom comes down from the opponent, and because I'm actually working up mana to cast this Inkwell Leviathan, here I use a Garruk to start untapping some lands. Next turn I'm going to have 7 mana plus the island, so if I draw another one, then in a single turn I can cast the Inkwell Leviathan, which is really good against the Abyss, obviously, and against all of their removal spells. So we didn't draw a land, but we did draw a Treasure Cruise, which lets us draw 3 more cards, which pretty certain to hit a land. Play it here and play a birds and make a beast. So now the Abyss is going to take out our beast, and we get to keep the birds around. With that said, they use a cast down end of turn to kill the bird, so instead we're going to have to sacrifice the beast. Bunch of triggers going on the stack for the opponent, but they have nothing else to say about it. Abyss is going to kill our beast, but with the land and Garruk's plus ability and the copied Soul Ring, we now get to cast out our Inky, which is immune to the Abyss, which only destroys non-artifact creatures. Opponent does get to use the land tax again, so this is their turn to stabilize. Probably a Wrath of God effect would be pretty good for them right here. Instead they have a simple Lyra Dawnbringer. Standard All-Star, probably not going to do it in this circumstance, since with the extra land we get to cast a nice little Craterhoof Behemoth, use Garruk's Overrun ability, and attack for roughly lethal, putting the opponent to -2. So that wraps up game number 2. Let's head into the sideboard again, now that we've seen a little bit more information from the opponent. So in that game they definitely seemed far more controlling and less aggressive. We didn't see the history of Benalia, we didn't see that Hero of Bladehold or anything. So I decide to take out Sensei's Divining Top and put in a Song of the Dryads. The top is fine, but I felt like it wasn't really doing enough, and the Song of the Dryads does at least deal with some of their enchantments, some of their planeswalkers, and might give us a shot of actually winning via the late game route. So with that said, we'll submit the deck list, cross our fingers, and head in for the final game. Here we are for the third and final game, winner takes all. Our hand is not amazing, but at least it has the turn 1 elves and has a couple of other things going on. Rexage seems especially good against their deck with all the Abyss, etc. going on. Opponent Inquisitions and actually takes Rexage instead of the elves, which is always a worrying sign. Vindicate takes out our forest, since the opponent knows we don't have a second one, and drawing the Courser means we can't play it here, unfortunately. A Moat from the opponent shows why they were afraid of that Reclamation Sage, since now creature without flying can't attack. Sheldok Isle gets a Song of the Dryads under, and we manage to play an Oracle of Muldiah, playing another land. However, Toxic Deluge from the opponent means that we now don't have any more mana sources in play, no more green mana sources. The opponent is luckily on 1 card, but we're just bricking here. Mana Vault's dealing us 1 damage every turn. So we do really need to find that green source, can't even cast this Treasure Cruise at the moment. Again, the opponent's still on 1 card in hand. So they're definitely bricking as well. We've got plenty of cards, we just need to find some way to cast them. Mox Jet is not going to do it, and I decide not to play the Mox Jet so I can discard Tooth and Nail to next turn have a Treasure Cruise up. It turns out we did draw the Forest, so I can play the Mox here, use this Treasure Cruise to draw 3 cards, hopefully get us out of this sticky spot. Play down the Llanowar Elves. Opponent has a Gideon Jura, which is going to be a little bit annoying for us. Planeswalker's always good on these kind of boards. I'm going to play a Courser out, and then I've got enough fewer cards in my library to Song of the Dryads from under the Sheldok Isle, the Gideon Jura. A lot of things going on here. Opponent just passed the turn back to us, and we've got a Metamorph on top of our library. Cast our Jace down here, draw 3 cards, put some lands on top so we can cast them with the Courser again. None of our creatures can attack, so my plan is to end of turn beast from within the moat, and then next turn Craterhoof Behemoth. Of course, the opponent's not going to let us do any of that since they're here. They have a Massacre Worm, so in response we'll cast that beast on the moat, since we do need to take the moat out, otherwise we don't have a way of winning the game. Or I guess Jace can win the game. Opponent has a Soul Ring here, and our Lotus Bloom finally comes off suspend. So Jace is going to unsummon that beast, and we're going to cast down our big Inky and another Elves of Deep Shadow. So here again the plan is to use Craterhoof next turn. Just going to pause this one. To use Craterhoof next turn to steal the win. Opponent attacks us with Massacre Worm. There was a choice there of blocking with the Elves of Deep Shadow or the Inkwell Leviathan. I considered blocking with the Elves, but then with the Elves in play it gives us an extra point of damage for the Craterhoof next turn. So I decided not to block with the Elves, and it was attacking Jace as well, so I decided to definitely block, because I wanted to keep Jace around. So in the end I blocked with the Inkwell Leviathan, which may have been a mistake, as it turns out, since now the opponent casts Balance, another one of the more broken effects in the cube, which unfortunately makes us just sacrifice all of our creatures. So Inkwell bites the dust. If we'd blocked with the Elves, we would have at least kept the Inkwell around. Well, 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 what can you do? So back to square one, although at least we have a Jace on the battlefield. Use Jace to try and draw some gas. At least we draw some more mana elves, meaning again, next turn we can cast this Craterhoof and Phyrexian Metamorph, copying the Craterhoof. I decide to untap the Mana Vault here, preparing for a big next turn. Draw some more cards, and the Ancient Tomb's going to help us cast all of our things if we need to. Start whittling the opponent down. So as I said, my plan next turn is to cast Craterhoof Behemoth and then Phyrexian Metamorph, copying the Craterhoof Behemoth. Got the Mox here, so we have exactly enough mana to be able to do this, and attack with all of our creatures. Cast his Craterhoof. Craterhoof enters the battlefield, and the opponent responds with that cast down, destroying our Craterhoof, meaning we can't now copy it with the Phyrexian Metamorph, so well played by the opponent there. Jace is going to start plussing to Fate Seal, and about this point I realise that we're rapidly running out of time on our clock. I've decided the only way we can really win this game now is by plussing Jace to the ultimate ability, but we're racing the clock, and the Mana Vaulters keep draining our turn because it requires us to constantly respond to its triggers. So Jace's ultimate is, of course, exile all cards from target player's library, then they shuffle their hand into their library. So that would win us the game. We do have a game plan here. Unfortunately, we just need to race the clock and try and get there in time. Una's Prowler from the opponent, again making it difficult for us to do things, because to keep our Jace on loyalty we're going to have to start discarding cards. Still Fate Sealing the opponent, 2 turns to go before the Jace ult can go off, but we're on 7 seconds left on the clock. Sorry, 10 seconds left on the clock, 7 life. Discard some cards to stop the Una's Prowler from hitting us, and we go down to 4 seconds. And unfortunately it doesn't look like we're going to win this game with the Jace ultimate. Drawing Garruk here is nice. That would be a very decent way to win the game. Unfortunately, we get clocked, and the opponent wins in the finals. I did feel like we had the edge on the opponent in that game with our Planeswalkers. I feel like we definitely had the win. I took a while when I was playing, calculating all of my mana requirements and trying to think around all of the different plays from the opponent, so it was a good long game. Downside, of course, being that we lost to time, but hopefully you managed to see the power of all of these 1-mana elves. Of course, the deck was completely open in draft, and so we jumped in on that, and we got really rewarded. Deck was, of course, fun to play, always a blast when you can start Craterhoofing your opponents, and I hope you learned a lot about the Vintage Cube, the power, how to build certain decks, and I'll see you next time here on Arcane Cards for more drafts.